I was preparing for this, and I was looking at, this handy dandy list of rules that I thought we all abided by. It was called the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, this crazy thing. And I have him violating the First, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth, the Seventh, the Eighth, and the Ninth Amendments. I can't find evidence that he's violated the Second and Third, and we'll see on the state front right now.
Yeah, what about the 10th?
Well, that's what I mean. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't have an easy case to say he's violated the 10th yet, although I think what he's doing with the Department of Education arguably might be doing that. But that might be a stretch. But when you just look at this one case, am I crazy to say that in some ways the Trump Justice Department and what the we may say a violation of the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. I mean, these are the amendments that are there to essentially put some boundaries on what the state can do to somebody that they think might be a criminal.
Yeah. So you would think that if the notion of human liberty and rule in a society of ordered freedom had any meaning at all, it would be that when you have been, you're living here, your deportation case has been adjudicated 6 years ago, and the immigration courts have said you can't be deported to El Salvador. You would think that if the notion had any meaning at all, it would mean that the government can't arrest you apropos of nothing with no criminal allegation that you did anything wrong, stick you on a plane and send you to a kind of supermax prison in the one country that they are not allowed to deport you to, without anybody, without a judge ever hearing about it. And your wife only finds out about it because the head of DHS goes and poses in front of your jail cell for a picture. You would think that's what it would mean, but apparently not.
So it is. Let's talk about the Supreme Court ruling here and the word they chose to use. The administration does not believe the Supreme Court has ordered them to have him returned. They believe that the Supreme Court simply said, and this is, I'm sort of interpreting based on what you wrote. You seem to think that their interpretation is, if El Salvador chooses to send him back, the United States has to accept him.
Correct. That is their interpretation. So the word that the district judge used was facilitate. And the genuine complexity here is, let's say,
and how do you interpret the Supreme Court order?
Well, so the Supreme Court says, the district court said facilitate and effectuate.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court says, be careful with the word effectuate, because that implies that the court can order the government of El Salvador around. It implies that the court can order the outcome of a U.S. foreign policy thing, and the president kind of runs foreign policy. So be careful with the word effectuate, but you're certainly within your rights, district court, to order that the government facilitate his return. So the district court turns around and says, okay, you have to facilitate his return. And the government interprets the word facilitate as, in exactly as you said, that if the government of El Salvador wanted to send him back, we wouldn't erect domestic obstacles to that. And Kristi Noem actually, or Pam Bondi even said, we would send a plane. That is not, if you read the Supreme Court's ruling, I think what the Supreme Court had in mind, which is they were saying basically, we want to be careful of ordering around a sovereign foreign government and ordering the mechanics of the way the president interacts with that government. But the government clearly screwed up here, and it's totally reasonable for the court to try to get it to correct its error.
So do you believe the Supreme Court watered their order down?
No, I think this is very much the order I would have expected from this Supreme Court, which
Okay,
is
let me stop. This Supreme Court, would you? That's what I mean. Like, this is what you expected from this version of the Roberts Court, not what you would have expected from a generic Supreme Court on this issue.
so. To be fair, I think there
Yeah.
is the Supreme Court. The conservative justices here do have a quite legitimate, in my view, care about interfering in the way the president conducts foreign policy. And I
And
don't
in
have
fairness, for the most part, this court's been consistent on that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
They're very light on the executive branch in general.
correct. And
Yeah.
particularly in foreign policy and national security
Right.
matters. So I don't have a problem with that, actually. And I think if John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett want to say, uh, you know, the district court is wholly
Hmm.
within its right to demand a remedy here. It's got to be a
Right.
little bit careful about how it does that. That doesn't bother me a bit, actually.
Okay.
And it cheered me, in fact, that 9 justices of the Supreme Court agreed on the premise, which is A, this is not okay for this to have happened, and B,
Right.
that the district court has some real latitude to require a remedy. Now, because the district judge, whose name is Paula Sinas,
Hmm.
has been pretty aggressive about doing that.
Hmm.
The Justice Department is now appealing the matter again, and we'll see this time around whether the Supreme Court means something as narrow as what the government interprets it as having said, and I don't believe that will happen, or whether it's going to give her some latitude to
Right.
say, hey, when I said facilitate his return, I mean, you
Right.
got to do some stuff to get him back.
So let's come up with some things that might facilitate. Does that mean the ambassador formally petitions the Salvadorian government? Is that, I mean, what do you think will generally fall under that umbrella? What
So,
actions?
so I think the first thing is something, right? So what's happened so far is nothing
Right.
except that the president met with the Salvadoran president in the White House and the two of them made fun of the court's order.
Right.
Right. So that's what's happened so far. So I think if you were going to satisfy the Supreme Court that you were facilitating, you would probably have to do more than zero and then
Hmm.
mock the court. And by the way, bald-facedly lie about what the Supreme Court did.
Right.
Um, so look, if you were dealing with a normal administration, what you would expect would be for a official to either come into court or file a declaration
Hmm.
that listed all the steps that they
Right.
had taken and said, I mean, you've read 100 of these executive branch
Right.
declarations. Here are the steps we've taken to comply with the court's order. Here is the results that we've gotten.
Hmm.
We're planning to do the following things. And this is what the judge has asked for. And I think if
Hmm.
you did all those things, first of all, if the president asked President Bukele to send him back,
Hmm.
they would. The Salvadorans don't have a
Of
particular
course.
interest in detaining this guy. But the hard place would be, if you did all those things, you went through that pro forma
Hmm.
exercise, but then
Right.
you also had a wink and a nod understanding with Bukele that he would say no.
Right.
And that would put the court in a very difficult position because all of its formal boxes would
Right.
be checked. And yet the guy, but short of articulating something that you've done, I don't think you can actually go back to the district court and claim to be in compliance with the order and expect the Supreme Court to accept that.